The human fleet entered the system with urgency, their ships cutting through the cold void of space like arrows aimed at an unseen target. The coordinates were precise, but nothing had prepared them for what lay ahead. As they approached the outskirts of the colony, the first sight that greeted them was the blazing light of combat. The colony was under siege. Alien ships, massive and intimidating, hovered over the surface, unleashing relentless blasts of energy. The human fleet had arrived just in time, but the odds were against them. Captain Arlo stood at the bridge of the lead warship, his hands tightly gripping the armrests of his command chair. His eyes were focused, scanning the data streams that flooded the display screens. The fleet's arrival had been detected, but the enemy hadn't pulled back. If anything, they had intensified their attack. There was no time to waste. The colony's defense stations were failing, and the survivors on the surface were barely holding on. "Target those lead ships," Captain Arlo ordered, his voice calm but firm. "All units, engage." The order was given, and instantly, the Deathworlder fleet sprang into action. The engines of the warships roared to life, and the ships surged forward, their weapons charging with lethal intent. The fleet's primary goal was to break the enemy's formation, buy time for the colony to regroup, and hopefully push back the alien forces. But the aliens had their own plans. The human warships unleashed devastating volleys of fire, their laser cannons and torpedoes lighting up the darkness of space. The alien ships, sleek and dark with jagged, razor-sharp hulls, dodged and countered with surprising agility. Despite the Deathworlder's reputation for superior firepower, the aliens seemed to anticipate every move, every shot. Their cloaking technology was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Ships would vanish in the blink of an eye, only to reappear in a different position, launching a new wave of attacks. "This isn't normal," Arlo muttered under his breath. "They're too coordinated." His first officer, Lieutenant Kara, stood beside him, her eyes scanning the enemy's movements with disbelief. "Their ships are disappearing and reappearing. It's like they're warping space itself. This isn't just technology, it's something else." Arlo clenched his fists. He had fought in many battles, but this was different. The enemy was no longer just an external threat. They were manipulating space itself, making them more dangerous than any physical weapon could ever be. The question now was, how do you fight something you can't even see? "We need to find their weakness," Arlo said, his mind racing. "Keep firing, but don't focus on where they are. Focus on where they're going to be." The crew responded immediately, changing their targeting protocols. Instead of following the aliens' erratic movements, they adjusted their aim, firing at predicted positions where the aliens would reappear. It was a gamble, but it was the only option left. The Deathworlders were relentless. Their ships had the firepower to destroy entire fleets in minutes, and now they had to rely on their sheer willpower and their unique, unforgiving tactics. The first few shots that landed on the cloaked enemy ships caused the atmosphere on the bridge to shift. The aliens had made a mistake. One of their ships faltered in its cloak and was hit directly by a concentrated volley. It erupted in a shower of sparks and debris. "Yes," Kara shouted, her face lighting up with a rare smile. "We've got them." The momentum shifted for a moment. The humans began landing more direct hits, each one chipping away at the alien fleet's numbers. But just as quickly as the battle seemed to turn in their favor, the remaining alien ships seemed to adapt. A new wave of smaller, faster vessels emerged from behind the larger warships, almost like drones sent out to harass and confuse the human fleet. "We've got incoming," Kara yelled. "Smaller ships are targeting the rear of our formation." The human fleet's formation began to crack under the pressure. The smaller alien ships darted around, weaving through the massive human warships with ease, firing with precision and speed. One of the human vessels, the Icarus, was struck directly in its engines, sending the ship spiraling into space, its systems flickering and fading. The crew was cut off from the rest of the fleet. "Commander, we've lost contact with the Icarus," the communications officer reported grimly. Arlo felt his heart sink, but there was no time for regret. His fleet had one job: to protect the colony and push back these invaders. The lives of the crew aboard the Icarus, and the countless others on the colony, depended on it. "Focus fire on those smaller ships," Arlo ordered. "We need to clear them out before they tear us apart." The battle raged on, every ship engaged in a deadly dance of fire and fury. The humans fought with determination and skill, but the aliens had turned the tide once more. They were too fast, too unpredictable. The human fleet was being pushed to its limits, and soon they would be overwhelmed. But just as it seemed like the situation was completely hopeless, a flash of light from behind the enemy fleet caught Arlo's attention. Another ship, human, unmistakably, had entered the battlefield. "Is that?" Kara began, her voice filled with surprise. Arlo's eyes widened in recognition. "It's the Titan." The Titan was one of the Deathworlder fleet's secret weapons, a massive warship designed for one purpose only: overwhelming force. Equipped with heavy planet-killer weaponry and a crew of the toughest warriors from the deadliest worlds in the galaxy, the Titan was a force to be reckoned with. And now, it was here. The Titan fired, its massive guns shaking the stars. A single shot obliterated one of the enemy's smaller ships, sending debris scattering into the void. The tide of the battle shifted once again. With the Titan now on the field, the alien fleet was no longer an unstoppable force. Humanity had brought its own devastating weapon into the fray. But Arlo knew that this wasn't over. The battle had only just begun, and the true test of their resolve was yet to come. As the Titan charged into the heart of the enemy fleet, Arlo's mind raced. How much longer could they hold on? Would the Titan be enough to push the aliens back, or would this deadly game of cat and mouse continue until humanity was completely overwhelmed? The battle for survival was far from won, and with each passing second, Arlo knew that the stakes were growing higher. As the distress signal echoed through the command center, humanity's top military leaders and scientists were faced with an overwhelming decision. The urgency of the message left them no time to second-guess their options, and there was only one clear choice: deploy the Deathworlder fleet. The fleet, a terrifying force of humanity's most battle-hardened warriors and technologically advanced warships, was the only hope in stopping the alien invaders. However, the task wasn't simple. The Deathworlder fleet wasn't just any military force. It was a combination of ruthless efficiency, unparalleled combat training, and extreme technological superiority, designed to handle only the most dire of situations. The commanders understood the risks. The aliens they were about to face had proven themselves to be far more advanced than expected, and humanity's first contact with them had been a shock. But the Deathworlders, with their unmatched ability to survive and fight in the harshest conditions, were humanity's best and only option. As the fleet was mobilized, there was a palpable sense of tension. These warriors were chosen from the most dangerous planets in the galaxy, where life was brutal and survival meant constant warfare. The fleet's soldiers were conditioned to handle the unimaginable: inhospitable climates, savage beasts, and threats that would break any lesser warrior. But none of them were prepared for the unknown enemy they were about to encounter. As the fleet prepared to launch, Captain Arlo stood at the bridge of the flagship, his face unreadable. He had seen countless battles, had fought on planets that had made others quiver in fear, but today felt different. Today, the stakes were higher. The SOS had been clear. The alien threat was real, and it wasn't going to be an easy fight. He gave the order, and one by one, the Deathworlder ships began to power up and break free from the docking stations, their engines humming with deadly anticipation. Each ship was a weapon in itself, equipped with advanced weaponry, shields, and tactical systems that were light years ahead of what most other fleets could dream of. As the fleet entered hyperspace, the soldiers aboard each ship took their positions, preparing for the battle ahead. They didn't know exactly what to expect, But their mission was simple: destroy the alien invaders, protect the colony, and make sure humanity's presence was felt across the galaxy. The journey was long, the uncertainty gnawing at the edges of their minds. There was always a risk, a possibility that the alien threat was unlike anything humanity had ever faced, but these warriors had been forged for this very moment. Captain Arlo paced the bridge, his mind constantly running through battle strategies, weighing every possibility. The fleet had encountered enemies before, and while many had been powerful, they had always been able to adapt and overcome. But this was something different. The aliens weren't just a physical threat. There was something unsettling about them, something almost predatory. Their ships moved with a kind of unnatural grace, slipping through the vast emptiness of space like shadows. Arlo couldn't shake the feeling that this wouldn't be a straightforward fight. The officers on the bridge worked in near silence, their fingers moving across the control panels with practiced ease. They didn't speak much, but each one knew what was at stake. Each soldier was determined to succeed, driven by the weight of what they were fighting for. Humanity had just begun to make its mark on the galaxy, and now it was at the mercy of forces far beyond anything they could have anticipated. As the fleet neared the coordinates of the SOS, the silence was broken by the voice of Lieutenant Kara, the fleet's communications officer. "We're approaching the system now, Captain. The distress signal is coming from a colony on the edge of this sector. They're reporting massive attacks, but they can't provide any details on the enemy." Arlo nodded grimly. "Prepare to exit hyperspace. All ships, get ready for immediate combat. This is it." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace with a jolt, and the scene that greeted them was even worse than they could have imagined. The colony was in flames, its structures burning under a relentless barrage of alien fire. Thousands of smaller, agile ships moved around the massive warships, weaving through the carnage like a swarm of locusts. The humans had arrived just in time to witness the sheer devastation. "Enemy ships detected," the sensor officer called out. "Massive fleet, over 30 warships and numerous smaller vessels. It's unlike anything we've seen." Captain Arlo's jaw tightened. There was no time for hesitation. He could already feel the weight of the decision that had brought them here. The enemy was organized, efficient, and relentless. He had hoped for a sign of weakness, but what he saw was an ironclad resolve that could only mean one thing. This was a fight to the death. "Engage," Arlo ordered, his voice cold and commanding. "For the colony. For humanity." The Deathworlder fleet surged forward, weapons charging, their ship designs like the very embodiment of destruction. The time for planning had ended. Now it was a matter of who could endure the longest and who could strike the hardest. The fate of the colony, and perhaps humanity itself, rested on the coming battle. The Deathworlder fleet surged into the heart of the chaos. As the human ships rocketed toward the colony, the vast emptiness of space seemed to contract around them. The alien forces did not retreat, nor did they hesitate. The enemies in front of them were not just invaders. They were a well-organized, highly strategic force. Alien warships, dark and foreboding, lined up in formation, their jagged silhouettes cutting through the backdrop of the dying colony. The humans were outnumbered, but the Deathworlders had never been ones to shy away from impossible odds. Captain Arlo's eyes flicked over the displays. The enemy ships were unlike anything the fleet had encountered before. Sleek, almost organic in design, with dark, shimmering hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved in coordinated patterns, a hive mind that made them unpredictable yet deadly. The commander quickly realized that this was no ordinary invasion. These were not the typical, mindless alien forces one might expect. No, these invaders were calculating, intelligent, and had a distinct purpose to their actions. They weren't just here to destroy. They were here to conquer. "Focus on the larger vessels," Arlo commanded, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "We need to break their formation. Fire at will." As the command was given, the fleet's weapons fired in unison. Beams of light and missiles shot across the battlefield, cutting through the darkness. The soundless explosions that followed were enough to shake the souls of those on board. For a moment, there was hope. Some of the enemy ships began to crack and burn, their once imposing forms beginning to buckle under the pressure. But it didn't take long before the Deathworlders realized they were not the only ones with advanced technology. The aliens' warships seemed to vanish into thin air. 1 second they were there, locked in the sights of humanity's weapons, and the next, they were gone, leaving only a fleeting shimmer in the void. The human fleet faltered for a split second, unsure how to adapt to the new threat. The aliens weren't just moving faster, they were warping space itself. "They're cloaking," Kara shouted from her station. "We can't track them. They're bending space." The alien warships reappeared suddenly, striking the fleet with precision. Their weapons unleashed bursts of energy so powerful they tore through the shields of the human ships in an instant. One of the larger human warships, the Ironclad, took a direct hit to its starboard side. Sparks erupted across the hull, and the ship veered wildly off course. The crew scrambled to regain control, but it was clear the Ironclad was out of the fight. "Sir, we've lost the Ironclad," Kara reported, her voice strained. "We can't re-establish contact. It's gone." Captain Arlo's heart clenched, but there was no time for regret. He knew that the fleet had one chance to survive, and that chance lay in adapting faster than the enemy. "Increase forward speed," he ordered, gritting his teeth. "Deploy countermeasures. We need to anticipate their next move." The fleet responded quickly, initiating evasive maneuvers and deploying electronic countermeasures designed to disrupt the alien cloaking systems. For the first time in the battle, the Deathworlders could see the enemy ships in full view. The small, fast-moving alien vessels were no longer invisible, but they were just as deadly. Their weapon systems were unlike anything the humans had ever seen, energetic bursts of destructive power that seemed to eat away at the very fabric of their ships' hulls. "Lock on to those smaller ships," Arlo barked. "Do not let them get too close." The larger alien warships remained a looming threat, but the smaller vessels were now the greatest danger. They darted around the battlefield, harassing the human fleet and making it difficult to get a clean shot. It was as if they were purposefully trying to split the fleet apart, creating chaos in the Deathworlder ranks. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the human fleet struggled to regain control. A loud crash echoed from the hull of Arlo's own flagship, the Vanguard. The ship shook violently, sending crew members stumbling across the bridge. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered. Kara's fingers moved quickly over her console, attempting to stabilize the ship's systems. "We've taken a hit, Captain. Shields are down to 40%. We're exposed." Arlo clenched his jaw. The battle was far from over, but they were losing ground. The Deathworlders were not used to being on the defensive, and the constant pressure from the alien fleet was starting to take its toll. "Redirect all power to shields and weapons," Arlo ordered. "We'll make our stand here. We can't let them tear us apart one ship at a time." The Vanguard and its fleet pressed forward with renewed determination, their weapons lighting up the dark expanse as they continued to exchange fire with the alien forces. But the tide of the battle was starting to shift in the aliens' favor. Every strike the humans landed seemed to be met with a counterattack twice as powerful. Then, just as things seemed at their bleakest, something shifted. The deep hum of the Vanguard's engines grew louder. Arlo's eyes widened as a massive object appeared from behind a nearby asteroid field, emerging at the very edge of the battlefield. It was a ship, larger, more imposing than anything Arlo had ever seen. Its weapons were already charging, and the massive dark shape loomed over the battlefield, like a shadow. "Is that the Titan?" Kara whispered, almost in awe. Arlo didn't need to answer. He could see it too. The Titan, one of the fleet's most secretive and most powerful warships, had arrived. With the arrival of the Titan, the Deathworlder's spirits were lifted. The alien fleet had underestimated the depth of humanity's resources. As the Titan powered up its weapons and fired, its sheer destructive power shook the battlefield. The first alien ship to face its wrath was torn apart in seconds, sending debris scattering in all directions. It was a glimmer of hope, an unexpected force that could turn the tide of the battle. But Arlo knew this victory was only temporary. The aliens were far from defeated, and the Titan was only one ship in a vast and unrelenting battle. The fight had just become even more dangerous, but humanity had proven one thing. They were not to be underestimated, and with the Titan joining the fray, the true challenge was only just beginning. The battle raged on, a furious storm of light, sound, and fire that seemed to tear the very fabric of space apart. The Titan had made its mark, but the alien fleet was far from broken. The humans' arrival had thrown the invaders off balance for a moment, but the aliens quickly adapted. Their ships, sleek and dangerous, moved with terrifying precision, weaving in and out of the chaotic battlefield like hunters stalking their prey. They weren't going to back down easily. Captain Arlo stood at the helm of the Vanguard, eyes scanning the battlefield with the intensity of a man who knew the stakes of this fight. The Titan had brought a new kind of hope to the Deathworlder fleet, but it was clear that the aliens weren't going to fold. Their tactics were unpredictable, and they used their advanced technology in ways that kept the humans on the defensive. The Titan's firepower had leveled one of the enemy ships, but the others were swarming around it like bees protecting their hive. The human fleet had to do more than just survive. They had to finish what they had started. Reinforce the left flank. Arlo barked, his eyes darting from one screen to another. We need to push them back before they regroup. The battle was becoming a deadly game of attrition. Every move the Deathworlder fleet made seemed to be countered almost immediately by the alien forces. Their ships were agile, darting around and appearing out of nowhere to strike in places where they were least expected. Arlo's heart raced as he saw another human warship, the Halcyon, take a direct hit to its core, its shields failing in an instant. The massive ship shuddered under the blast, and the enemy wasted no time, launching a barrage that tore through its hull. The Halcyon exploded in a burst of fire and debris, and the crew aboard the ship were lost in the blink of an eye. "Captain," Kara shouted from her station, "we've lost the Halcyon. They're picking off our ships one by one." Arlo's face darkened, but his voice remained calm. "Stay focused. We're not losing this fight." His orders were precise, as always, and the Deathworlder fleet responded like a well-oiled machine. But the cost of each order was beginning to show. The enemy had been relentless, and the sheer number of alien ships made it seem like the human fleet was being consumed by an unyielding tide of fire. The Titan continued to hold its ground, its massive guns firing relentlessly, but even it couldn't turn the tide of the battle on its own. The fleet needed more firepower, more coordination, more resolve. As Arlo was about to issue another order, an unexpected signal flickered onto his screen. It was an encrypted message, a code only a few of the highest-ranking officers in the Deathworlder fleet would recognize. Kara looked up from her console, her expression hard to read. "It's from the Cerberus, Captain," she said, her voice low. "They're asking for backup. They're being overrun." The Cerberus was a formidable warship, one of the best in the fleet, and if it was calling for backup, it meant the situation was far worse than anyone had imagined. Arlo knew that losing the Cerberus would be catastrophic. It was one of the fleet's primary defensive ships, and without it, the enemy would have a clear path to destroying the rest of the fleet. "Send the Ares and the Apollo to assist," Arlo ordered without hesitation. "We can't afford to lose them." The pressure was mounting, but Arlo could feel the pulse of the battlefield, as if it were his own heartbeat. The enemy had the upper hand in numbers, but the Deathworlder fleet had something else. The unbreakable spirit of those who had fought for survival on the deadliest planets in the galaxy. He knew it wasn't enough to simply fight. The human fleet needed to hit back with everything they had. As the Ares and Apollo moved toward the Cerberus, Arlo watched as the alien fleet began to regroup. They were adapting, learning from every move the Deathworlders made. It was no longer just a battle of weapons. It was a battle of wits. The enemy was intelligent, calculating, and unwilling to allow the humans to gain any ground. "Fire at will," Arlo commanded, his voice steady and full of authority. "Every ship, focus on breaking their formation. If we can shatter their unity, we'll have a chance." The human fleet's firepower lit up the dark expanse of space as the ships opened fire. The larger, more powerful warships took aim at the enemy's central command ship, hoping to bring down their leader and cause a chain reaction. The smaller ships, though outnumbered, darted around, trying to find any weak points in the alien defense. Each shot that landed brought a small victory, but it was never enough to turn the tide completely. Then, the unexpected happened. The Titan moved into the heart of the enemy fleet, its massive guns firing on all cylinders. For the first time, the alien ships seemed to hesitate. The Titan was an unstoppable force, and it wasn't about to let the aliens regroup. The human fleet followed its lead, pushing forward with a renewed sense of purpose. The battle had entered its most critical phase. Now, it wasn't just about winning. It was about surviving. The alien ships began to break apart, one by one, as the human fleet found its rhythm. With each shot, the Deathworlders pushed back the invaders, slowly but surely. But Arlo knew this wasn't over. There was still more to come, and the enemy would find a way to fight back. "We've got them on the ropes," Kara shouted. "They're retreating." But Arlo wasn't convinced. "Hold the line," he said firmly. "We're not done until every last one of them is gone." As the alien ship started to falter, Captain Arlo couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. The Deathworlders had proved their might, and despite the odds, they had begun to turn the tide of the battle. But even as the enemy began to retreat, Arlo knew the real fight was just beginning. The alien forces were relentless, and they would return. The Deathworlder fleet had won today, but the cost had been high, and there was no guarantee they would win again. In the darkness of space, where victory and defeat were defined by a single moment, the battle for humanity's survival had only just begun. The battle's roar began to fade as the alien fleet, battered and broken, started retreating into the blackness of space. The Deathworlder ships, though scared and bruised, remained steadfast. The sounds of weapons fire and explosions gave way to an eerie silence, broken only by the hum of engines and the soft chimes of damage reports flooding in. The human fleet had survived, but at a cost. Ships limped away from the fray, their hulls punctured and battered. The Titan, though still intact, was not unscathed, its massive guns smoking from overuse and its shields flickering under the strain. Captain Arlo stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, his eyes trained on the flickering screens ahead. The alien fleet had withdrawn, but the question remained, why? The invaders weren't known for retreating easily, and they hadn't been this close to victory in their campaign against humanity. Arlo could feel a cold knot forming in his stomach. This victory might have just been a brief pause before something worse, a preparation for a second, more devastating wave. "Kara, what's the status on the retreating enemy fleet?" Arlo asked, his voice low, betraying the unease gnawing at him. Kara's hands moved quickly across her console. "They're still moving at high speed, Captain. They're heading towards the edge of the system. But there's something strange. It looks like they're not just retreating. They're regrouping, forming a new formation." Arlo's mind raced. Regrouping? How? The communication officer, Lieutenant Kara, hesitated. "We don't know, sir. The cloaking devices are active again. We can't track their movements now, but it's clear they're preparing something." The warning bells rang in Arlo's mind. The aliens weren't done with humanity. Not by a long shot. There was no time to waste. His orders were clear. Pursue them, and ensure this enemy threat was eliminated once and for all. If they were regrouping, it was a signal that they were preparing for something even worse. A counterattack was inevitable. "Rally the fleet," Arlo ordered, his voice hard and commanding. "Set course to intercept. We don't let them escape. All ships, engage cloaking sensors and reroute power to engines. We need to track them. We finish this now." As the fleet repositioned itself for the pursuit, Arlo felt a sense of urgency creeping into his thoughts. This wasn't over. The human fleet had barely managed to hold its own, and now they were about to walk right into the heart of an unknown threat. The aliens weren't just going to disappear into the void. They were regrouping for a reason. Aboard the Titan, the situation was no less dire. Captain Karras, a seasoned commander with years of experience leading Deathworlder forces, stood at the bridge of his massive ship, reviewing the damage reports that came in from every corner of his vessel. The Titan had taken heavy fire, but it wasn't just physical damage that concerned Karras. It was the uncertain tactics of the alien invaders. "Where are they?" Karras muttered under his breath. "What are they planning?" His first officer, Lieutenant Haley, looked up from her console. "Sir, the enemy fleet is accelerating. They're heading into deep space. It's unlike anything we've seen before, almost as if they're waiting for us to follow." Karras's lips curled into a grim smile. "They're taunting us. They think we're desperate, but if they're waiting for us, they will regret it." He turned to his crew. "Prepare all weapons. Set a course to intercept. We'll hit them with everything we've got." No more hesitation. Back on the Vanguard, the pursuit began in earnest. The human fleet had been through hell, but they were still a force to be reckoned with. Arlo's face was grim as the fleet pressed forward, each ship locked in tight formation, weapons primed and ready. The looming question in every officer's mind was the same. What were the aliens planning, and how would humanity react when they found out? The space ahead seemed to stretch on forever, cold and empty, the stars distant and uncaring. And then, the enemy reappeared. The alien ships emerged from the depths of space, but this time, they weren't just retreating. They had formed a massive new formation, larger and more imposing than anything the humans had seen before. At the center of the formation was a colossal ship, bigger than anything the Deathworlders had, and its weaponry gleamed in the cold light of distant stars. "Captain, what are we looking at?" Kara's voice was thick with disbelief. "That ship, it's huge. It's not just huge," Arlo cut her off. "It's a command ship. It's their flagship." The alien flagship was a monstrous thing. It shaped something far beyond human understanding, an amalgamation of organic curves and jagged mechanical structures. It seemed to pulse with a strange, otherworldly energy, its surface flickering with what looked like hundreds of energy signatures, as if the ship were alive. The Deathworlders had faced impossible odds before, but this was something different. Arlo's hand tightened around the armrest of his chair as the fleet prepared for the final engagement. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for the future of humanity. If they failed here, it wouldn't just mean the loss of a fleet. It could mean the extinction of the human race. "Open fire," Arlo ordered, his voice cold and steady. "We've come this far. We finish this now." The human fleet launched into the final confrontation with everything they had. The Titan led the charge, its guns blazing and shields glowing as it moved into position. The alien flagship fired first, launching massive waves of energy that tore through the emptiness. It was a test of endurance now. Who could hold the line the longest, who could strike hardest? But even as the Vanguard and the Titan bore down on the alien forces, Arlo knew this battle would push them to the brink. The aliens had waited for them to catch up, and now they had them right where they wanted. They were playing for keeps, and the humans were about to face the most brutal fight of their lives. The fate of the galaxy was hanging in the balance, and only one question remained. Would humanity's Deathworlders rise to the challenge, or would they fall beneath the weight of an invincible alien force? The intensity of the battle reached a fever pitch as the Deathworlder fleet charged toward the alien flagship. The cold void of space was lit up by the blinding streaks of energy beams, and missiles crashing into shields, the echoes of destruction vibrating through every ship in the fleet. The humans were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their very existence. The alien flagship loomed ahead like a nightmare, its massive form intimidating in size, but the human fleet was relentless. "Target the central core," Arlo ordered, his voice sharp and unwavering. "Take out their flagship, and the rest will fall apart." The fleet responded in unison. The Titan led the charge, its cannons firing at full power, each shot shaking the stars themselves. The smaller human warships moved in with precision, their smaller frames dodging incoming fire while launching their own devastating barrages. The battle was now an all-out assault, no more evasion, no more second chances. Every ship in the Deathworlder fleet had one purpose: destroy the alien flagship. The alien ships, despite their overwhelming size and technological superiority, seemed to be faltering. Their once perfect formations were beginning to break down under the pressure of the human assault. The Titan fired its main cannon again, the massive burst of energy tearing through the enemy flagship's shields. A massive explosion rippled across the flagship's hull, its once imposing form beginning to show the first signs of weakness. Arlo's heart raced as the flagship's shields began to fail, but he knew the aliens weren't done yet. They had too much at stake to go down without a fight. "Captain, their flagship is responding with full counterfire," Kara shouted from her station. "They're retaliating with everything they've got." The enemy flagship unleashed a wave of devastating energy, cutting through the human ranks like a blade through paper. One of the smaller Deathworlder ships, the Perseus, was caught in the blast, its shields failing instantly. The ship disintegrated in a fiery explosion, the crew lost without a chance to escape. The destruction sent shockwaves through the fleet, and the crew aboard the Vanguard felt it too. Every ship was taking hits, but none more so than the smaller vessels. "Hold steady," Arlo barked, his fists clenched. "We have to press on. We're not letting them win this." The Vanguard fired once more, and this time their aim was true. The alien flagship's central core was exposed, and a second, more powerful shot from the Titan ripped through it, creating a massive rupture. For a split second, the void of space seemed to pause as the flagship's core exploded, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The alien ships began to scatter, their formations breaking apart as their leader. The heart of their strategy was destroyed. But the victory came at a cost. The Deathworlder fleet was battered, their ships left in ruins, and the loss of the Perseus was only the beginning. Arlo watched as the last remnants of the alien fleet tried to regroup, but it was too late. They had lost their command center, their strategic advantage. Now it was only a matter of time before the rest of the alien forces were eradicated. The remaining ships retreated into the depths of space, but the damage had been done. The Vanguard was crippled. Its hull was torn open in places, the electrical systems flickering. The Titan had also taken significant damage, but both ships remained operational, though barely. Arlo knew it was only a matter of time before they would need to return to base for repairs. He took a deep breath, his mind still reeling from the sheer ferocity of the fight. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity, and now they had paid the price. Yet, even as Arlo surveyed the damage, a sense of unease settled in the pit of his stomach. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. "Status report," Arlo ordered, his voice filled with determination. Kara's fingers flew over her console, reading the reports. "We've lost 40% of the fleet, sir. Multiple ships are critically damaged, but the alien fleet is retreating. We've pushed them back for now." Arlo nodded, but the victory tasted bitter. The fight had been brutal, and the cost was higher than any of them had anticipated. The war had not ended with the destruction of the flagship. If anything, this was just one chapter in an ongoing saga. He knew that the aliens would return, and when they did, they would come with a fury that would make this battle seem like a mere skirmish. "Prepare the fleet for follow-up operations," Arlo said quietly. "We may have won today, but we'll need to rebuild regroup, and prepare for the next attack. Humanity will not be caught off guard again. As the human fleet gathered its remaining forces, Arlo felt a deep sense of pride mixed with the weight of the ongoing struggle. The Deathworlders had proven themselves to be a force unlike any other in the galaxy. They had stood firm against the seemingly insurmountable odds, and in the end, they had triumphed. But victory came with a heavy cost, and the war was far from over. Looking out at the scattered remnants of the alien fleet, Arlo's mind raced. The aliens had suffered a great loss, but he knew that they would adapt. This victory would be but a small reprieve before they returned with new strategies, new weapons, and new ways to challenge humanity. The war was not over. It was only beginning.